Mate, thanks for helping me out with this. It's brilliant.
Anytime.
No, it's
I'm a little nervous, but I got the beer.
no, yeah, no problem. I'll get you another one in a minute.
I'll make sure the logo is not showing.
That's all right. We'll give a shout out. Overcame Brewery. It's actually really nice, that beer.
Yeah, it's a good
That's the
one.
one they had in the pub the other
Yeah,
day.
that one's a good one.
Yeah, it's decent. A little bit different, this one, isn't it? Because you didn't come to the US from anywhere, but your family did.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the podcast now is trying to get out to, we were talking about the other day about how trying to do more than just people who've come here, just
Yeah.
overcoming obstacles and things like that, and what people have done to get past that. Welcome to the Crossing the Pond podcast, hosted by me, Gary Adair, where each week our guests will recount their own experiences of resilience and transformation. Whether it's moving to a new country, tackling health challenges, changing careers, or breaking through personal barriers. Today's guest is Andre Santiago, who shares his journey growing up in a Puerto Rican family in the Bronx in New York City. He talks about how he overcame many challenges as a young man, but over time, and with a little help from some positive influences, he discovered the power of community and how it can change both his mental and physical health. Andre shares how connecting with others has helped him push through obstacles, embrace fitness, and become a dedicated distance runner. He shares that by finding his people, by way of his personal relationships, or the camaraderie with his local running club, he has slowly been able to find himself. Your family's originally from Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Who was the first one that came in the family? Who was the first person?
Yeah, that was my grandmother. She was born in Puerto Rico in 1939, and then she moved to the Bronx when she was 16 years old, so 1955. Yeah, she moved there to learn how to study. Obviously, moving into a public house where they were going to let her study and go to school. And she turned out to be a scam. Found this out through my mom, that it happened to be a scam where they would trick young women to be maids, to like become maids in homes. And she didn't want to do that.
So she thought she was coming for school?
Yeah, she thought she was coming for school from Puerto Rico. And she's 16 years old, brand new country, could probably barely speak English. She actually couldn't speak English at all, even when I was a child.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so I'm sure for her at the time was very terrifying. And you're this brand new city and you're like, oh, I'm so far from home. And where she is from in Puerto Rico is like a small rural area, and it's like farmland on top of a little mountain, taking care of like cattle and like pigs and chickens. So like going from that to the Bronx is like a huge like culture shock for her, I'm sure.
Once she figured out that it was a scam, what did she do?
She ran away. She ran away, and according to what my grandmother told my mom, she was living under a staircase for several months until she was able to save up enough money to get her own place,
Right.
and have her own job.
Presuming the people knew she was under the staircase.
I assume so.
Harry
Someone must
Potter.
have known. I can only imagine what life was like back then. Hats off to her. It must have been terrifying when you're 16 years old and trying to figure out life by yourself.
And your grandfather was Puerto Rican also?
Yes, he was Puerto Rican. His mother died when he was only 2 years old. His father and his stepmother were apparently extremely abusive, so he decided to leave Puerto Rico and move to the Bronx. He happened to be a vendor in the subway selling like food, hot dogs, etc. He eventually met my grandmother and they got married. Then my mom and my uncle were born in the Bronx. My uncle was born in 64, my mom 65. And this is during a time where like the Bronx is just like, it's projects, it's on fire in certain parts of it. It's rubble. It's not the safest place to be.
Everything you see in the movies when people hear the Bronx, that's what they think.
Exactly.
It's a lot different. It's a little bit different now, isn't it? But
yeah, it's much different now. But yeah, it was a different time back then. If you look at some of those pictures.
What was it like for you growing up up there?
Yeah, for me, certainly not that crazy, but I was still crazy, I would say. It was more of like a Caribbean vibe in there, like a lot of Jamaican, Puerto Rican, Dominican. White, certainly not much of it. People who do know me, like I can kind of pass because I have like the light blue eyes, I have light skin, light like brownish hair. And then when I was a child, it was actually red, my hair.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, apparently there was my dad, he has a cousin, he called me red all the time, where apparently my hair was just like super reddish. But yeah, so like trying to pass, you're like a white looking kid in the Bronx. It's tough, especially when you have like an older brother who actually looks Puerto Rican, the dark hair, like even my mom, dark hair, dark eyes, more tanned. And, the rest of my family are the same way. And I'm just coming out, I'm like, wait, did they just like mix me up with some other baby before they sent me out?
Would you have been like Yankee Stadium, Bronx, South Bronx?
Yeah, I'm in the South Bronx. I grew up in the South Bronx. So Yankee Stadium was probably like a mile and a half to 2 miles away from where my mom lived. So it was like walking distance, or you could just hop on the BX 19 and take it over to like Yankee Stadium.
If you don't know me, but I'm scared of the bus over here. I don't think I've ever got on the bus over here, ever.
It's not worth it. It's like it is stressful. It is stressful, but you can get free fares. I'm not saying you should, but people just hop on the back of it, and the bus driver won't stop you.
Does your mum still live there?
Yeah, my mom still lives there. It's changed a little bit. I would say it's more like it's definitely more of a melting pot. Certain areas of it, like closer to like the Port Morris area, it's like a lot of new developments. So you're getting people who are moving into that area because it's like a lot cheaper. They tend to be moving from like Manhattan because they want to get a little bit more space.
Yeah.
It was definitely developing quite a bit before COVID, and then COVID, I felt like brought the Bronx back like 10 steps, unfortunately, because it completely halted the development of brand new restaurants and bars that are opening in the area. But it's certainly changed quite a bit since, when I was growing up.
When was your first kind of interaction with Americans?
Ooh.
What age are you? Because if everyone's from somewhere else where you grew up, what point do you come across Americans?
Yeah, that's it. I would say probably when I started going to like high school in like Manhattan,
Yeah.
because if you're growing up in the Bronx and then like all your school experiences are in the Bronx, like you're just dealing with other Hispanics most of the time and people from the Caribbean
Yeah.
and that Caribbean like type vibe of like other people and cultures, even though like the islands are very different, they kind of share a lot of similarities, even like within their food and the way they raise their kids. And like the community's kind of like keeping an eye on all the kids out there,
Yeah.
especially when they're in the public parks nearby and everyone's like playing there. But in Manhattan, that's when I started meeting more quote unquote regular American, the city slickers, the white
Yeah.
kids. And I'm like, whoa, I kind of look like you. It's kind of weird,
But I don't act like you at
I
all.
don't act like you at all. And then that started like making me question is like, well, is the way I'm acting wrong? Nowadays, I feel like it's okay and cool to represent where you're from, quote unquote, if you're from the hood, as I was. Back then, it was not. You were like looked down upon, like as if you're just
Yeah.
like this vagrant, and you're like, oh, you can't speak well, you can't do X, Y, and Z well. You're probably not going to be successful in life. And it definitely started to make me question, is like, who am I as a person?
It's like you don't fit in the Bronx, and then you don't fit in when you go down to high
Right.
school. What's that like for you when you're a kid?
Yeah, it was tough. It was definitely tough as a kid because I felt like I was definitely more of a loner. Let's be honest, I didn't look Puerto Rican. So, like, when you don't look Puerto Rican, you're getting picked on because of that in your own neighborhood and community. Then you go to like high school and you're like, well, you're definitely not white and you can't speak like us. So, they're like, all right, so what are you then? And then I found myself in some kind of weird limbo. And don't get me wrong, I had friends. I was hanging out with other outcasts and stuff like that and then
Yeah.
having fun. It's not like I didn't have any friends, but being a loner certainly made me, I would say, mentally tougher because like you kind of had to figure out a lot on your own.
Yeah.
Definitely made it a little harder in the future because like opening up to people was a lot harder. Even coming on here and just talking about myself, I don't normally talk about myself at all. Even most people I've met who I've known for years are like, wait, what? You do this and that? Like I had no idea.
What sort of things did your mum do? What did she do to keep you consistent with the Puerto Rican roots
Yeah, it's a good
as you were
question.
growing up? Did you go back?
Yeah, she would. So she would send me back with my older brother. My grandmother would take me back there with my
Okay.
older brother every summer since we were very, very little. At least
To
over
work on
here.
the farm?
Yeah, yeah, you're out there working. You're taking care of the chickens, you're taking care of the pigs. It really is in a very rural area where you're very far from anything else. Like I even remember like bringing up pails of water for the adults so they could use the water in their home. When it was like time to go bathe, it was like, all right, go down by the river. There's like soap in like inside these alcoves in the side of a rock that was carved out.
Yeah.
Because this is inland in Puerto Rico. It's not by the beach. Like you would think, oh, you're going to Puerto Rico, you're gonna be by the beach. No, you're inland on like this little mountain. So you're going down to like this river. And my older brother would just like hold my hand as we go out into the river and it's like, all right, here's this soap. Like it's time to bathe.
When was the last time you went?
That's tough. I think the last time I went was probably 6, 7 years ago. Not to that area, unfortunately. Like I think it's changed hands, like the home that they owned.
Right.
It used to belong to my great great grandmother at the time. Unfortunately, she passed. So we actually haven't been to that plot in a while. But the last time I was in Puerto Rico, I did go with my wife and we went to San Juan and Old San Juan, and it was nice to kind of just experience Puerto Rico as like more of an adult and to really get like a vibe for it. And the funny thing about Puerto Rico, like as I've mentioned before, when I was in the Bronx growing up, I was light skinned and blue eyes. In Puerto Rico, you have that all over the place
Yeah.
because it was this huge port for like the French and Spaniards, and they have the natives, the Taino Indians, and they also had like the slaves that they were bringing to the island itself. So you have this huge melting pot of like different skin colors and eye colors and hair colors.
Yeah.
So in the Bronx, they're like you get picked on for it, but in Puerto Rico, you're just like, wait, great, there's like tons of people that look just like me.
You found your place.
Yeah, I
Do you
did.
think you talk about being kind of an outcast, an outlier in your own neighborhood? Who was or what was major influences on you when you were growing up?
I would say at the time, my stepdad was probably my biggest influence, especially as I got older, probably in like my late teens. For a while, when I was an outcast, I was definitely kind of a rebel. I talked back pretty often to my
Right.
mom and my grandmother, which they did not like. I got a few backhands for that one. Just kidding.
No, you're not.
But I definitely acted out. I definitely remember like skipping classes and just like I was acting out because I didn't know what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and how I fit into this world because I just didn't find my quote unquote tribe yet. And then I remember my biological father, my mom apparently reached out to him to try to get him to step in. But there's a guy who skipped out when I was pretty young. So of course he said no. He's not going to get involved. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
But then my older brother, he has a different father who I call my dad. But for now, just reference him as my stepdad so people don't get confused. He stepped in and he just set me straight. This is what you should do. You just like focus on classes. You just focus on what you need to do. No more acting up. No more like speaking out to your mom or your grandmother. Like he became like that quote unquote father figure. I needed to just give me a little bit more structure and guidance.
Yeah.
And realize that like, hey, what I'm doing is just self-destructive, and you need to have like a little bit more discipline because he was pretty disciplined. He would constantly grind and work endless hours as a doorman. And he just wanted to make sure, like, not to toss away my current life because I just wanted to act up and end up like one of these other kids from my neighborhood who just end up selling dope on the street or getting shot or stabbed over some dumb thing that in the grand scheme of things would be inconsequential.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, or you've mentioned to me before about your weight, which is hard
Yeah.
to believe if people see the pictures of you now. Like, was there a point where things had to change for you? Because how heavy were you at one point?
Yeah, so for people who don't know my height, I'm 5'6", but the heaviest I weighed was definitely way over 350.
Jeez.
So I was a mini small planet at the time. But a lot of that came back to like what I was mentioning too, is like I was acting out, and then a part of that was like being self-destructive, and that meant just eating food left and right, pounding soda, and just like I don't care about my body, like who cares, you know?
Plus all the Puerto Rican cooking as
Yeah,
well.
and plus all the Puerto Rican cooking, yeah, because they serve you.
Which and you can't turn that down.
No, and
No.
if you've ever met a Puerto Rican, if they love you, they're gonna just fill up your entire plate with lots of food. So that's actually a sign of endearment, and you should take that as a good sign if they really love you. But yeah, I was very very heavy at the time, and at some point I remember my stepdad getting sick a few years later when I was closer to 20. I was already starting to get more disciplined. I was going to community college, and I had a job, and he got sick with cancer. It was IgD multiple myeloma, which is an extremely rare form of multiple myeloma. It's like less than 2% of people who even get multiple myeloma get this. People don't survive past less than 2 years.
Wow.
So, like, an extremely rare form of cancer that's extremely aggressive, practically has no survival rate. And I just remember seeing him in, his cot, when he was getting his first round of treatments. And I was like, you know what? I really need to clean up my diet. Not saying diet was a part of that. It's just more like I need to like start safeguarding myself because at some point I don't want to be like suffering either. Not saying I'm going to get cancer, but I just figured, all right, there's things I can do I can put things into my own hands, and cleaning up the diet and being a little bit more active by walking around and starting to work out and lift is a part of that. So yeah.
Is that something he's saying to you, or is it just you seeing him in the shape that he was in at the time?
It was seeing him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was seeing him. Because he was also a kind of a guy that would like not speak his emotions. I remember when he passed away in 2013. So he used to work as a doorman for this building that was run by the church. And like all these women from across the world would travel here so they can go to school. So they would just stay there for free at this building. He was a doorman there. And his coworker in the building invited me and my brothers to go to his memorial. So we went there. And I don't think I've ever like bawled so hard in my life because like all these people that I had never met in my entire life loved him in this building. Like they had incredible stories about him, how like generous he was, how like kind he was. There's one time like it was like middle of winter, and like this homeless man came into the doorway, and he was wearing only like a few layers of clothes, and my dad just gave him like his coat. It was like, all right, here's his coat, here's my food for tonight. Eat and just chill here until like cool like warms up a little bit, and then you can leave.
Mm. The sad thing is, you only see the impact that he's had after he's
Yeah,
after
yeah.
he's
You
passed.
don't really appreciate it in the moment. Like I try to appreciate it as much as I could in the moment, but then I feel like after he passed
Yeah.
is when you appreciate it. But yeah, now I remember when what I was talking about is that like, he was similar to me where he wouldn't like really express his emotions. But then I remember like through this his coworker, he would just say like all he would ever talk about is his kids.
Mm.
kids, plural. He only had one. But he saw me and my little brother also as his sons. And I just remember losing it. I was like, so he saw us as his family. Like, these were also my children.
Yeah.
You know, he made sure he raised us. And like before he passed, I remember he told us, it was like the day before he passed too. We were there. And I think everyone could kind of know. Even this is a guy who would never complain about anything. Even when he was taking this treatment and he knew he had little time left and there was probably no chance of surviving this, never once did he complain, never complained about pain, never complained about how he was feeling. Most people would just be just whining, complaining the entire time, and for good reason, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it put a lot into perspective for me. And then that final day, he just said, just make sure you take care of you, yourself, and your brothers. And I think that's what really like got me on the road of like, all right, fitness is, I need to like really start getting into shape and taking care of myself mentally and physically.
Yeah, because ever since I've known you, you've been involved in running, but you mentioned it a little bit there as well. Before that, you were lifting.
Yeah.
What was the thing that drew you to lifting?
Yeah, I felt like if I built this quote unquote armor around myself, that it would protect me in like some kind of way. And for me, like, so it was like kind of like a low barrier for entry. And also there's a skill I can learn and I can
Right.
get really good at. And I also felt like I just genetically, I have good legs. Sorry to brag. Everyone in my entire family has huge calves, huge hammies, and good glutes. So it's like if I was just built for squatting, for picking up heavy stuff. So I was like, I can get into this. And the moment I started lifting, and I was first, I lost a bunch of weight through diet and just like a lot of walking and stuff like that, and doing like the elliptical. So I wasn't running yet. So I was just doing a ton of elliptical work. But once I lost a ton of weight, I was like, all right, let me get lifting, and then I'll start like build this body up a little bit, and I got super into it, man. Like I remember like the first time I even started to like deadlift more than 3 plates, I was like, oh my god, this feels great. You know, you're just like yanking
Yeah.
up this heavy weight and just screaming at the top of your lungs while you're doing it. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How do you stay disciplined? It's hard enough for me to get on that Peloton
yeah,
and do something, and I'm not in terrible shape. But
right,
I can imagine being 350 and then trying to just go, all right, yeah, I'm gonna eat
yeah.
properly.
I
All of a
mean.
sudden, just bang, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, those first couple months are tough. I'll say that. You
Yeah,
know, it was tough to like change the mindset from like, all right, you're just pounding food nonstop and pounding sweets, going nuts. Trust me, there was days where I was like, oh, I don't really want to do this. And like I was definitely very self-conscious because when I was heavier, you go into the gym and you got all these people who are like way more fit than you
yeah,
are. Then you start to meet people who like see what you're doing. And over the course of a few months, I remember a few people coming up to me and just be like, just keep doing what you're doing. I saw you when you first came to the gym, and like I saw like the huge difference that you've made already. So
mhm,
people like that along the way who would come and give you compliments, even advice about like how to work out and how to get better and how to get stronger, like little things like that really goes a long way.
yeah. But you've got that mindset as well, basically from being a kid, where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah,
I don't care what these people think because they're gonna think whatever they think anyway. It doesn't matter.
right.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah. Is it rude of me to ask you about the process? Like, if you weigh that much and you are that big, and then all of a sudden you've down to the size you are
Yeah.
now, like, what goes into that?
Yeah, so I did end up having surgery because I was so heavy. Like I had so much skin
Yeah.
around like my waist, almost like when you fold over an envelope that like that flap. So I had like an envelope flap thing just like around my waist, and I'll be honest, like at some point I got so lean I could literally see like all my abs. I was jacked, but then I had just all this skin just drooped around my waist, like I was wearing a skirt, and I was like, "Damn, this is like really messing with me." This is at the point where it's like I actually need to get someone to come in and do the work to
Take
actually
it off.
remove it. Yeah,
Was that a lengthy process?
it was actually pretty easy. I would say like it took about 2 weeks to like fully recover from
Yeah.
surgery. I remember just hobbling around like an old man, like bent over,
But
a bunch of
it
tubes.
must give you such a new lease of life, though, innit? When it probably just validates everything you've done, and
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're jacked up and you're feeling great. But is that the point that you transitioned into running?
Running kind of started roughly around COVID because all the gyms closed. So I was doing a lot of calisthenics at home, and I started getting a little bit into running. I wasn't great at it at all.
Mm,
And then I was kind of off and on through COVID with running. And then I remember at one point I was walking the dogs and like so out of breath and just like, it just makes zero sense. I'm deadlifting over 500 pounds for reps. Easy. I can't even go up a flight of stairs without being gassed. Like, this is just out of control. Even like the runs I would go on, I'd be like 2 miles and I'd just be like, oh my God, I'm like on death's door. At that point, I was like, all right, maybe I need to change things up. Maybe fitness can be a little bit different than just lifting all the time. And this is also during a time where people would tell you, like, oh, if you run or do any cardio, it's terrible for your lifting. But nowadays, if you look around online, hybrid athletes are completely a thing. Back then, it wasn't. So this was like uncharted territory. It's like, how am I going to navigate? Because I love lifting and I don't want to abandon it. But then you look at all these runners online and they're like rail thin. Not that there's anything wrong with that because all they're doing is running. But I'm like, I don't want to be that either. So how can I be in the middle?
At this point, you've ran 7
Yeah.
marathons
Yeah.
and recently ran a 50 miler
Yeah.
ultra marathon in Prospect Park over in Brooklyn there, which is
Yeah.
bananas to me even think about that. How do you build up again then? Because it's a different fitness, isn't it?
Yeah. It's completely
How do you
different.
build up to that?
So obviously, like you mentioned, like I started running a little bit off and on since 2020, but I didn't start taking it more seriously probably closer to like mid 2023. My fastest pace at the time was probably like 11-minute miles.
Yeah.
And that was me going hard, hard huffing and puffing those 11-minute miles. But the transition to get from where I was in 2023 and taking it more seriously to like where I am now is consistency. This is why I fell in love with running, is that running rewards consistency and smart training. You can't just go out there and just run hard all the time. I run probably 90% of my runs just easy and relaxed. And that just means like I can have a conversation with someone while I'm running. Nice and easy, relaxed, not trying to huff and puff. But it's the consistency over time and those training blocks that are just building upon each other every single time. So like you said, I've run 7 different marathons at this point. So every single marathon I've done, I've just gotten better and faster and more efficient because all those past training blocks just stack on top of each other. And and as you mentioned, there's the 50 miler. And to get to that point is just like a completely different mindset and change, because you're going from like a marathon where you're more or less redlining and you're kind of controlling your red line, where a 50 miler is more like you're focused on your fat reserves and trying to stay zone 2 and not go out too hot. And you need to have all that time on feet. And to build for that was a completely different training block than I'm used to. For time on feet, I mean, I'm out there every Sunday running 20 plus miles leading up to it for like 10 plus weeks,
It's ridiculous.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
If you're running a regular marathon, what's the furthest you'll run before the marathon? 20?
Yeah, most people would run probably roughly around 20. For me, the most I've ever done before a marathon was 23 to 24.
Right.
When people just run 20, I feel like it doesn't give you a better grasp of where your body and fitness is.
Yeah.
You can get to 20, but then cutting out the last 6.2, it's kind of like mentally is a lot.
Yeah.
But if you train in your training block and you had like a 23 miler, you can let out 3 more.
Yeah.
It could be in a world of hurt, but you can let out that last 3 because just all you have is 3 more.
I don't think I've ever ran 6.2 miles. Couldn't tell you. Maybe playing football when I was a kid.
Sometimes.
No chance, mate. But honestly, talk about 11-minute miles, we'll be lucky. What was your motivation to run that 50 miler?
For me, it was a different challenge. I really wanted to push myself to another level. Yeah, I'm not the fastest runner, but I've learned that I'm very good at pushing through a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort, more than most people.
Right.
So I think that I know I have that skill set, and I knew that would be applicable to running a 50 miler in low single digit weather with high winds. For people who don't know what this race is, there's a Prospect Park Track Club's 50 endurance fest. So there's a 50K, which is 31.3 miles, and then there's the 50 miler you can do. This is a 3.2 mile loop, and you do 15 loops of the park. Now, whether or not I can do it was a different story, but my mind told me you can 100% do this.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was just more about telling my body, I'm just going to have to shut up and just let my mind carry me.
So how many people started it?
Somewhere between 100, 150 people.
And how many
who
people
did it?
finished it?
Probably less than half of that probably finished it, I would think.
Wow.
It was freezing that day, and the wind chill was just out of this world. And through the day, you would think, all right, maybe by the time it gets to noon, it'll warm up. It got colder. Every single time you came into the station, where there's like this huge swath of like drop bags, and the drop bag has like all your fuel, your food, and anything you might need that might come up, even like swapping out your shoes or something like that.
Right.
But I'd come into the station and I just see people just quitting. It's tough to watch people quit, and people with like elite fitness. I'm seeing people there who I talked to before the race even started who said like, oh yeah, I've run a 100 miler recently. I've done 50 miles before. I've done this race before. They'll say that, and I'm like, oh, so you guys are just you've been here already, so you're gonna crush this. But those same people I'd see there and dropping before even the 26 point, like before the marathon distance, they're dropping at mile 20, 15. I'm just like. Like if they're dropping this early, like why am I here?
So then again, it's this kind of thing, this army of one thing that you've got going on in your own head. You're like, I'm not stopping. Keep on going here.
I think that's part of it too, because in my head I was just like, quitting wasn't an option.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. I'm freezing, but at some point it becomes like your new normal. I remember standing there and seeing the volunteers shake and tremble because they're not moving. But as long as I kept moving, I knew I can stay warm enough.
Yeah.
So it's just constantly about moving forward. But you mentioned the Army of One, and this might be the first time where like felt more like a team sport because had all these incredible people from Jersey City runners who came through, former coworkers who came through too. They're not only cheering, they're actively running with me. Even someone who was volunteering from the actual club, Prospect Park Track Club, Dave, shout out to Dave, incredible person. He was there super early because he was volunteering and decided to run like the first 3 loops with me. After I ran the first loop, he ran like the next 3 with me. So having all these people come out and that's helping too. They're spending their day freezing out there with me, making sure I'm moving forward, regardless of what I need or what I need to do at that point.
That's great. What time did you finish?
A little over 11 hours. So like,
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was tough.
So, all right. So let's get away from cold December 50 minus and go to the hometown marathon. You've ran the New York Marathon 3 times.
Yeah.
So what's the best thing about the marathon, but also running it in your home city?
There's nothing that comes close to like the crowds, the energy, and the vibe of the New York City Marathon. And there's stretches, like especially in Brooklyn, where you're running and the road is probably 2 people wide because of the crowd in the street with you just yelling in your face and you can't even hear your music. I'll have my music full blast.
Yeah.
What noise cancellation? And I'm still hearing people screaming in my face as I'm running through. So like the vibe and energy really carries you through. And it's nice to see all these different neighborhoods, these communities coming out to like support other clubs and like just people out there really grinding it out. And of course, like getting to step into the Bronx,
Yeah.
See my hometown a little bit.
That's always right at the end as well, though, when you're dying.
Yeah, you're already dying. You're already hurting.
What parts of the course are most challenging, but also most enjoyable?
Oh, this is tough. But there's so many different, almost like microcosms where it's like really enjoyable and then really hard. The hardest part for sure is the Queensboro Bridge because you're already like 17 miles in, and this bridge is super steep, and you're already exhausted by the time you get to this bridge at mile 17. So you've already burnt a ton of energy. So you see people break. So this is when you find out if your fitness over those last 3.5 to 4 months pays off. Because I remember seeing people just like collapse on this bridge, just pass out. They're just cramping. And I'm like, you got, 9 more miles.
All the way up first half.
Yeah. First half ain't no joke either. As you come off the bridge, they call it the wall of sound. Because you just hear this boom, just people just hearing you on. And you just feel like a superhero as you come off that bridge and then you come onto First Ave. If you're feeling good coming off that bridge, you just start hammering it home. You just start hitting it hard,
I've never done the marathon, and I probably never will, but I've been on first half. By the time people get round off that bridge, half the people in the crowd are half in the bag anyway. They've been sat in all the pubs waiting for everyone to go past.
Well, that's what my wife does. She's out there. She said, sometimes I get jealous because one time she took me to the bar that she goes to with like her friends. And I was like, oh, this food's amazing. And I'm like, oh my, everything's amazing here. And I just think in my head, I'm like, I will never get to experience this.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too that's beautiful about the marathon. It's like a hometown crowd, so you can have family come through. It's been a few times like my brother's been in Brooklyn at mile 7, just there cheering with his son and stuff like that, which is great with his wife. I love that. My wife is always at mile 18.
What about your ma?
She comes through too at mile 18 and they'll move over to mile 23, which is great. So I get to see them twice. Which by the time you get to mile 23, that's when you need to see them because like you have every reason in the world to be like, all right, this is really hurting really bad.
I mean, you mentioned then about people on the bridge breaking.
Yeah.
But what do you see during those days on top of the crowd that just pushes you to go again and keep going?
First marathon was New York City, and I finished in 5 hours and 30 minutes, which was not a great time at all. I'm like, this is probably 11, 30, 12-minute miles.
I would take that now.
Yeah, I would take, at the time it was great because it was my first marathon, so it was a PR regardless. But I remember like cramping at mile like 17 and a half, and I was standing at the gate just in pain. And some woman in the crowd just came over and just gave me a Gatorade. I had no idea who she was. She ran to a store, brought me Gatorade, and gave it to me. And she was like, just chug it. So I just chugged it down. Things like that, like the fact that the crowd's out there and they're willing to like make sure these runners continue on, that goes a long way. And not only that, but like if you're a part of a club, that helps so much too. Because like the Jersey City runners, they'll have their stations too along the course.
Right.
And they're at mile 18.1 and then they'll move over to 23 and then make sure you're taken care of there too. Somewhat of like a little bit of a team sport, even though you're out there solo, running. You want to do well for them.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? So you're currently on a streak of running how many days in a row?
I'm at 559.
Listen, you might feel good about it telling your story. I feel like a bag of shit now because I've not done anything. It's brutal. What started this? Was it just one of those things where like, oh, I'll go running. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, I've done 30 days here. Oh,
Yeah.
and then oh wow, I've done 60 days. And then all of a sudden it just builds up. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. There's two people in the club. One of them still has an active run streak. One of them, unfortunately, could not continue his run streak because he got injured. But someone else who's like, I think he just completed his fourth year of his run streak. People like that inspired me. One day I was just like, I just kind of want to try something different. And it was more of like about building discipline for me. It's like, all right, can I go out there and still grind out a few miles? Now, there's a minimum of like 2 miles. And I'm not running hard all the time, as I mentioned before. So
Right,
like,
okay,
because I'll go out there and just run nice and relaxed. I'm not trying to hurt myself. After a while, I started to notice that like it built an insane tolerance in my legs to the point where like I can run a hard marathon and the next day I'm running just fine. Even like after the 50 miler, the next day I ran 3 miles.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, my feet were hurting, but like I can tell the difference between being injured and just being like a nagging pain. I can deal with a nagging pain, but like an injury, I can tell the difference. So I think that's the key too. But yeah, I felt like the streak not only built an insane discipline, but it built an insane physical and mental tolerance that probably most people don't have.
Yeah.
You start to realize that active recovery helps you recover. Not only that, but like you're just getting more efficient at it. And then your body starts to be like kind of craving it.
Yeah.
Because now like I wake up and I have to go. Because like my body's like, what are you doing? You need to keep moving. Like, you have to. And again, going back to like the mental tolerance of it too, regardless of the weather, I'm running.
Yeah.
So like downpouring rain, I'm out there. Snowing, I'm out there. Freezing cold, I'm out there. Hot and sweltering heat, I'm out
What
there.
about when you're sick?
I've done that. Not great.
Does it matter on the mileage?
I have a minimum of 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so like
if
that's
if
the
you wake
minimum.
up and you feel terrible, you're still going to go. But you're
I'll
just
still
gonna
go. I'll go super slow.
But you're also mental as well, though, and we haven't even said this about yet. But you run in shorts all the time. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I have an insane cold tolerance, more than probably most
you've
people.
got big legs, so I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
that helps you. But like, you ran that 50 miler in December
Yeah,
when it was, probably wind chill in the teens
yeah,
in like little running shorts.
yeah. Little running
It's
shorts.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I would say I did have like terrible like shakes when I got home after that. So I guess I found my limit of how long I could be out in the code. It's 11-ish hours. So that's my absolute limit. Maybe there's something wrong with me because there's so many pictures of me with my club and like they'll all be bundled up with like all these like knit caps and like jackets and gloves and I'll just be standing there in like a singlet and like 3-inch shorts.
Not even a pair of tights or something like that. Tights and shorts over the top. It's ridiculous. We haven't really touched on this a little bit, but how did your career evolve? Take a little bit of a step back.
Mhm.
When you came out of high school and went through college, what did you end up doing first?
Yeah, great question. At the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I liked computers. I knew I liked technology, but I wouldn't say I was like super passionate about it, but it was enough where I decided to go to community college to learn computer science and get into IT. So I ended up going to community college for that, and learning that, and then going to like a small like workshop called Per Scala's that was in the South Bronx. That taught you more like hands-on skills for IT and
Mhm.
network engineering. So then I used that to get a job, and I worked in IT for 7 to 8 years.
Did you enjoy it?
Not really.
No.
There was aspects of it I enjoyed. I think at the time the market was pretty oversaturated and I was working for a managed service provider. And for those who don't know what that means we're a small like call center and we manage several different clients. And that means, whenever they're calling you is because you're having a bad day and something's wrong with their device.
Uh,
And so you never get a call when someone's happy. You're only getting people who are at their worst moments. I get it because I've been frustrated with certain things. And at the end of the day, it's a customer facing job. So
Yeah.
there's only so many times you can pick up a phone where like someone's screaming at you. And this is why I don't pick up phone calls.
That's
to this
true.
day.
Yeah.
And my wife hates me for it because she's like, you never pick up your phone. And
It's
I'm like,
PTSD.
it really is. I just remember one time picking up the phone and this person would just, before I even picked up, I just had it like halfway up to my ear and I could just already hear him screaming at the top of his lungs over something I didn't even do.
Did the motivation to leave that job tie in with the lifting? Starting to be a little bit healthier, a bit more consistent with your dieting, losing weight.
Yeah.
Did that just go hand in hand, motivate you to A, work out, and then B, look for other opportunities?
It definitely taught me more discipline and gave me more confidence. But I didn't willingly leave my last job. Unfortunately, I got laid off. Being honest here, but I got laid off when I decided to take PTO, and they requested that I cancel my PTO. But I already had a trip planned to Iceland at the time with a fellow coworker. He had just been laid off a few weeks before then
Oh,
too.
okay.
So we kind of saw the writing on the wall. So when I came back from that trip, they laid me off because I decided to not cancel my trip. So I got punished for that.
Was
But
that one of the best things that happened, though?
yeah, it actually was because don't get me wrong, at the time I was extremely upset.
Yeah.
You spend so much time there and I remember working like 60, 70 plus hour weeks and I would never take a holiday off. I would always work weekends. I was working like 12-hour shifts at night sometimes. And I didn't mind doing it because I had so much discipline from like my lifting and working out. So
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I kind of applied that discipline to work where I would just get into a work mindset and just grind out hours and do whatever I had to do. But when that happened, it gave me time to take a step back, focus on myself a little bit mentally, and decide what do I want to do with this time. For a long time, I remember kind of like dabbling with software engineering. I would take like little courses online here and there. And then I saw this program called Access Labs through Flatiron School. And I was like, you know what? This is probably the time to do this because I'm doing a job, right? And why not? What's the worst that can happen? I can just maybe this isn't for me, but like I enjoyed enough where I'm doing it at home. So I'm enjoying it way more than I did IT at the time. And then when I got into that course, I loved it. I was like, this is like solving puzzles every day, trying to figure out like a new tool set and skill set and apply that to solving problems. And once I graduated from that program, I got my first job and I was like, yeah, this is where I belong.
Yeah.
This is completely different. I love it. The flexibility and work life balance I get there allows me to do so much. So
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you fit your running schedule around your current job? You're a lot more carefree than me, but it would drive me insane, that panicking. What if I can't go running today? I'm going to break the streak, and this is going to be a problem. Like,
my colleagues and my boss, they're very flexible with me. My boss more or less says, as long as you got your work done, just put in your Slack that you're running. Which, like, most people probably would not be that okay with it.
yeah,
But because I produce at my job and I constantly deliver on, deliverables and make sure they're ahead of time and I'm constantly communicating, that goes a long way of building trust. She knows if I'm out running, I'm going to come back later and be grinding at work and
Yeah.
get things done.
yeah.
So even on my run, sometimes I'll take a meeting while I'm running, and talk.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and she's completely fine with that. She's like, I know you're running, it's fine. But yeah,
Jesus.
it's great flexibility because like a lot of people at the job too are very active. There's even a run club chat, so like we like discuss things. And shout out to Noah, he's great. Like he's a great runner too. He keeps me accountable about my speed workouts. So it's good to have the support network of people who really push you forward. And like you have to live a life too. I feel like a lot of people, they work hard and they grind out hours at work and work becomes their whole identity. And at one point that was my identity.
Mhm.
And it's kind of tying back to the past where like I didn't know who I was. So I devoted all my time into work because that was my identity at the time. But then I started to realize like, no, there's more to me than this. And I try to treat work like that too. I love my job. I love my colleagues and all that. But like I need to love things outside of that.
What do you do outside of that? Whenever you're not running,
Yeah,
like, you're
whenever I'm not
whenever you're
running.
not running and you're not working, what do you do?
Yeah, obviously I love running and lifting, but I love dogs. Me and my wife, we've already fostered our 20th. We focus in a lot on fostering. We love going out dinners and we go to like theater, Broadway, etc. Love football. Obviously, I'm a Giants fan, so I just complain all the time in the football chat about them.
Oh,
But
yeah, I get them on at the Jets all the time anyway, so I can't say anything. What does the dog fostering do for you?
for me, I find it to be possibly even more rewarding than running. I won't say it's hard to say that. I would say it's because my wife normally finds the fosters, because I'm not on social media. All it takes is for one person to say yes. And this yes could be anything. It could just be like, yes to donate money to make sure this dog can get pulled by a rescue, or
Right.
yes to have a rescue pull it and deliver this dog to me to foster it.
Yeah.
And it's been a few times we've seen fosters where they're literally about to be euthanized. And my wife, Laura, she'll be like, what do you think? And they'll pull that dog probably within hours of being euthanized.
Mhm.
And now they're living this incredible life. Pretty recently, I think she was our 19th foster, Delilah, who's been renamed to Dory. The videos of this dog, she just looked defeated and just like done with life. They even like took her out the kennel and she just wanted to go back into the kennel and just lay down. She just like completely done. And then the next day, Joyride's Rescue was able to pull her right before she was euthanized. got her, taken care of at the local vet there and down in Houston, and got her delivered up to us. And then within a couple weeks, she's becoming a dog again. Like, she's like smiling ear to ear. She wants to sunbathe outside. That's all she wants to do. She comes in, she's learning how to play with toys. She has no idea what a toy is, but she'll grab it and then she'll start swinging it and just toss it and just like pick herself out. She's like, what did I just do? And then when they get adopted, and they're hard to let go, but when they get adopted, it just makes you happy. It's nice to see them go from where they're broken to realizing they're safe and live a life that they probably thought they couldn't live.
Yeah. What impact did finding your now wife, Laura, have on you? And obviously you've got to say nice things, otherwise she'll batter you. What did that do for you? The timing of it, the relationship that you have?
She made me realize there's more to me than I initially thought. She helped me improve my confidence, my self-worth from day one. Like, she's just so positive and active, and she's also extremely like into fitness as well, which was super huge to me.
Yeah.
Great. It's like, it couldn't be a better of a match. We love both going out there and just pushing ourselves hard and just really trying to like improve ourselves in some kind of way. She always makes me want to do better, which I think is like the key thing. Like, I never want to just be lazy, She always makes me want to like look at goals and look at the next year and be like, all right, what can I do to do better than this year? And not only improve myself, but our relationship, our family, our home, and build that up. And I think half the things I've done, I probably wouldn't even accomplish if she wasn't there, like in my corner.
Yeah, giving you a nudge.
Giving me a nudge and like being out there, like cheering me on. Even, going back to the 50 miler, like she ran the last loop with me. That's probably more memorable to me than most things in my life, know?
Yeah. Like the stories you tell me about all this stuff about resilience and motivation and losing the weight and getting into running and getting into lifting, like she's done a lot for you.
Yeah.
What do you think you may have offered her as well at the same time?
Ooh. I always try to be as supportive as she is with me. I'm always trying to like, whatever you want to do, I'm in your corner. I'm your number one cheerleader. And especially when it comes to like our fostering, like I always have her back for that too.
Yeah.
So like
you just bounce off each other, don't you? You're just kicking each other forward, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, and I think that's really important because those you two are on the same page and you're holding each other accountable. And when it comes to your diet and your exercise, I think if you're both mentally and physically active and healthy, I think that's just better for the relationship. And sometimes like you need time for yourself too, right? I feel like when you start to control those things, like it's unhealthy for a relationship. So like if you have to go do that for yourself, go do it. So like I'll just be like, I'm gonna hold down the fort. You go to the gym after work, take your time. Don't feel like you're rushed. Do what you gotta do.
Yeah. You mentioned before the Jersey City runners and how much they do for you, and you've got that community. Have you ever found yourself in a position where you're offering advice to other members of that club? So the other way, like you're helping them out as well, based on your own experiences.
Yeah, I do that quite a bit too, actually. A lot of runners do some, strength work and plyo, but not on the level as of what I was doing. I'm doing straight up just powerlifting, heavy weight for like over 7 years, right?
Right,
So
yeah.
I'm just like I'm ripping weights. So, and if you see me out there, like I'm a big dude, somewhere between 190 and 200, and I'm keeping up with the skinny guys. And sometimes like it'll just be random strangers looking at me like, wait, I haven't shaken this guy off yet. It's like I'm at mile 15, this guy is still on my tail. So like it goes to show you that it doesn't matter about the size, it's about like the quality of your work that you're putting in to get to this fitness level, right?
Yeah.
So people ask me for like recommendations. I'm always there available, and I'm always an open book too.
Yeah.
Because like I understand it's hard to balance both. As long as I continued eating enough and recovering smart, which means sleeping and eating enough food, I've gotten faster.
You were able to pass that on to other lads, and or whoever it is just taking that on as well and putting it into their own thing.
Yeah, a lot of people have started doing like their own lifting. They're like, I see people all the time now putting in their like weightlifting in Strava, and they're getting it in. I'm like, I love it. I love seeing it.
Yeah. You don't look like a runner.
No, I don't.
You don't. And that's like, so people probably go, oh, okay. And then, but like you said, it works because of the consistency or the quality of the training that you're doing. You've clearly got a decent network now between your relationship with your wife and her friends, and then the runners club as well. Like, what has that network done for you?
I feel like I have like a support network unlike I've had ever in the past. When you're out there, you're grinding alone most of the time in your life. You deal with like your own self-doubt. You start to question your own person, if that makes any sense. It's not just building about the network. It's also just realizing my authentic self and just being myself.
Yeah.
Rather than having to push on something I'm not. Whereas in the past, I was like, all right, work is my identity, or now I need to like talk a certain way to associate with certain people in Manhattan, when I'm talking to people on the phone at work or stuff like that. Now I'm just Andre from the Bronx who now lives in Jersey City.
Yeah.
I'm a grinder, but I'm also can be, I can be X, Y, and Z too. You can be a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
This group made me realize who I am, which I think is important because now I can just be myself and I don't need to be anyone else. I can just go out there and just like, oh, this is Andre. I know who Andre is. I know how he's gonna react to certain
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
And I love that everyone takes me as I am and allows me to be who I am.
Yeah.
I think that's super important.
Yeah, that's cool. But what advice would you offer to people who maybe have experienced similar hurdles to you, whether it's extreme weight loss or it's motivating themselves to complete a major challenge? I mean, in your case, it's a marathon, but it could be for somebody, it could be anything, couldn't it?
There's going to be moments where it's going to be tough and you're going to start doubting yourself. And it's going to be moments where you're going to be given easy outs that you can at any point just be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is done. It's like, let's say, for example, when I was moving from IT into software development, I remember there was a point during the course where I could, for some reason, could not grasp this concept. I was really doubting myself. I was like, damn, I'm gonna fail. And maybe this isn't for me. But then I just put in extra work. I was like, I just remember watching more videos and then like really trying to understand the concepts behind what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And after some point, it did click. But I could have also just been like, I'm done. This is it. Feel sorry for myself, be the Uncle Rico at the, the barbecue and be like, I would have been this if that didn't happen to me, but I could have done all that because I decided to say, no, you're not going to quit. You're just going to keep trying to understand this. I think that goes a long way rather than just taking the easy out. So yeah, there's going to be times where it's going to be very difficult, but you just cannot take those easy way out. You got to keep pushing forward one way or the other.
Yeah. What are you most proud of?
Probably the fostering. Obviously, I have like a lot of accomplishments, but like the fostering with Laura is probably like the number one thing. Being able to see these pups when we get them in and to really build up their confidence and build them up to be like sweet dogs that are like learning how to live and love and enjoy life is like it's probably the most rewarding thing to see.
That's cool. All right, mate. Last question. What's your next big running target?
Oof. I'm going to be running Jersey City Marathon in April, and I'm trying to aim for under 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Can you do it?
I feel like I'm getting there. My fitness at where it's at right now, and for my training, I'm early on in my training block. I'm already hitting those numbers. So the question is whether or not I can maintain it. And again, shout out to Noah from my company, but he might be coming out too to come pace me for that one. So
Cool. All right.
yeah,
So keep an eye out for that.
one.
Andre, thank you so much, mate. That was class. Like
Oh,
some
thank you.
great information, some cool stories. So I'm looking forward to putting it all together. Before you go, a couple of quick fire questions for you.
Go for it.
What's your favorite Puerto Rican phrase?
Oh, I don't know.
Well-
It's not a phrase, but my favorite thing, even though it's, my grandma, when she was mad, they called it the chancla, which is like the sandal. She'd take that and just throw it at us. A very Puerto Rican thing. She
Yeah.
just grabbed the chancla and just toss it as hard as she can at us when
Was
she was
she
mad at
accurate?
us. Pretty accurate. She'd get you around the corner with that
Oh, yeah?
thing. Yeah, every single time.
Is there a temperature it gets to when you will actually wear long pants?
No. So if we're going out for dinner or like something like that, I will put on pants. But like if it's just casual stuff, I will most likely wear shorts.
Do you have a favorite pair of shorts?
Yes, it's like I have a pair. Well, for like running,
Yes.
yes. New Balance 3-inch shorts I wear all the time.
3-inch?
Yeah, 3 inches. And then I love the chubby shorts for regular casual use.
Oh, yeah. Jesus, shorts guru. Trying to get a sponsorship deal. What's one irrational fear that you've got?
Oh, drowning.
It's not really irrational though, like, is it?
Yeah.
That's just a fear.
That's true.
I have a fear of swimming pools because I think there's going to be a shark in it. That is an irrational fear.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't think I have an irrational fear. I think drowning is the only one, the real fear I have, but sometimes I dream of it.
That took a turn, eh? What's the favourite home cooked meal from your mum?
Oh. So she makes a killer penne, which is like a pork butt that's like marinated for over 3 days, and then they roast it in the oven. Super good. It's like a pulled pork almost, and then it's a ropa vieja, which is like a shredded skirt steak over like rice and like beans. So it's a toss up between those two, but whew.
Now we know why you were 350. Jesus. What's one Olympic sport that you actually think you could do?
Maybe Olympic lifting. I don't know.
That's a cop out.
That'd be a tough one.
What would be the name of your autobiography?
Pain is fake.
And the last one, if you could run one marathon anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Oh, good one. I do want to do the London Marathon.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get into that lottery with stuff. Maybe the London Marathon sometime. That'd be fun.
Andre, thanks, mate. That's class. I really appreciate the time today. It's been brilliant.
Thank you.
Mate. Nice one.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you or someone you know has a story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us via our socials or visit www.crossingthepondpodcast.com to get in touch. Please be sure to subscribe, like, or leave a comment if you can. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.